You know that feeling. When something just feels magical? That's exactly how I woke up that morning. My heart was practically bursting with excitement. It wasn't just any day. It was our 10-year wedding anniversary. 10 years of love, of laughter, of building a life together. I had pictured this day in my head so many times, dreaming of how perfect it would be. And now, it was finally here. It had to be special. I started the day by making a reservation at that elegant little restaurant we both loved. The one with the dim lights, soft music, and those cozy tables by the window. Then I went straight to my closet, searching for the perfect dress. Not just any dress, but one that made me feel beautiful, confident, unforgettable. I chose a pair of silver earrings, the ones he gave me on our 3rd anniversary. Sitting at the kitchen table, I pulled out a blank card and started writing. Every word was straight from my heart, a love letter to the man I believed was my forever. By the afternoon, I was carefully wrapping his gift. A beautiful watch he'd been hinting at for months. Something timeless, just like I thought our love was. As I tied the ribbon, I couldn't help but smile, imagining his face when he opened it. My heart felt so full, filled with love, gratitude, and excitement for what the evening would bring. This wasn't just an anniversary, it was a celebration of everything we had overcome. At least, that's what I believed. By late afternoon, I stood in front of the mirror, looking at myself. And for a moment, I actually felt beautiful. Not just on the outside, but in that deep, quiet way. The kind that comes from knowing you've given your heart fully to someone. I slipped on my dress, adjusted my earrings, and ran my fingers through my hair, making sure every little detail felt just right. I wanted tonight to be unforgettable, for both of us. My chest fluttered with anticipation, and honestly, it felt like the night couldn't come soon enough. Right before heading out, I sent Mark a quick text. Just confirming. We're still on for tonight, right? A few minutes later, his reply came in. Busy wrapping things up here. See you tonight. My heart did this silly little flip. Typical him, always caught up in work, but always making time when it mattered. I smiled, feeling reassured. Nothing felt out of place. Everything was unfolding exactly the way it should. I grabbed my clutch, tucked the card inside, and carefully placed the gift in the back seat of my car. As I pulled out of the driveway, I kept picturing his smile, the way his eyes crinkle when he's genuinely happy. For me, tonight wasn't just dinner. It was a symbol, a reminder of how far we'd come. 10 years of love, of laughter, of growing together. And if I'm being honest, I felt proud. Proud of us. Proud of this life we built. Completely unaware. That reality was already rewriting my story. The drive to the restaurant felt different. Not in a bad way. More like this mix of butterflies and pure joy bubbling inside me. I kept glancing at the clock, making sure I wasn't running late. I wanted everything to be perfect, arriving right on time, walking in, seeing him smile when he spotted me. I imagined how he'd stand, pull out my chair, maybe even sneak a kiss on my cheek like he used to. Just the thought of it made me grin like a teenager all over again. When I finally pulled up to the restaurant, my heart did that little skip. I glanced at my reflection one last time in the rearview mirror, smoothed my dress, and whispered to myself, "Okay, this is it." Grabbing the gift and the card, I stepped out, feeling the cool evening breeze brush against my skin. The glow from the restaurant's windows felt warm and inviting. I could already picture the two of us, clinking glasses, laughing, reminiscing about our wedding day. I held on to that image like a treasure. As I walked toward the entrance, I checked my phone one more time. No new messages. Not that it mattered. He'd said he'd meet me here. I took a deep breath, my heart pounding, but in the best way possible. I walked in, expecting to see him there, waiting, smiling, maybe even holding flowers. Completely believing that tonight was exactly what I thought it was. Completely unaware of the storm that was quietly brewing just beyond my view. The moment I stepped inside, my eyes instinctively scanned the room, searching, hoping, expecting. My heart was fluttering in my chest, and I couldn't help but smile as I looked around. But I didn't see him. Maybe he's in the restroom, I told myself, brushing it off. The hostess greeted me with that polite smile, and I gave her his name. "Ah, yes, right this way," she said, leading me to a beautiful table by the window, the one we always preferred. I sat down, carefully placing the gift bag and the card on the table. My eyes kept drifting toward the entrance, waiting for him to walk in. Every time the door opened, my heart jumped, but it was never him. 5 minutes? 10? 15? I checked my phone. No new messages. It's okay, I kept telling myself. He probably got caught up at work. It happens. He's coming. I took a sip of water, glancing at my phone again, willing it to light up. Another 10 minutes passed. The waiter approached, asking softly if I wanted to order a drink while I waited. "Just a glass of wine, please," I mumbled, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. I tried so hard not to spiral, not to let my mind wander to places it shouldn't. But the silence from him, the emptiness of that chair across from me, it was starting to feel heavier than I expected. Still, I clung to the thought that any minute now, he'd walk through that door. 20 minutes turned into 30. I kept refreshing my messages like somehow, magically, a text would appear if I just checked one more time. Nothing. I tried calling, once, then twice, but it went straight to voicemail. No ringing, no chance to even hear his voice. Just that cold, robotic tone. "Mark is unavailable. Please leave a message." My stomach started to twist, that nervous flutter slowly morphing into something heavier, darker. I stared at the empty chair in front of me, my mind racing with excuses. Maybe his phone died. Maybe he got stuck in traffic. Maybe work turned into some kind of crisis. I wanted so badly to believe that, to hold on to that tiny thread of hope. But with every passing minute, that thread felt thinner, weaker. The waiter came by again, his expression a careful balance between polite and uncomfortable. "Would you like to order, or should I give you a few more minutes?" His voice was gentle, like he could sense the ache in my chest. I forced a smile. "Just a little more time." "He's probably on his way," I said, even though my voice didn't sound convincing, not even to me. As he walked away, I stared down at my hands, fiddling with the corner of the napkin. I could feel it, that sinking feeling. Like a knot tightening deep inside my chest. I didn't want to admit it, but something wasn't right. Something was really, really wrong. I sat there trying to hold myself together, but my mind wouldn't stop spinning. Every second felt like an hour. I checked my phone again. Nothing. Not even those 3 little dots. No sign that he was typing, no call, no explanation. Just silence. Deafening, soul-crushing silence. And the longer it dragged on, the harder it became to convince myself this was just some innocent delay. I glanced around the restaurant, watching couples laughing, sharing appetizers, clinking glasses, living the evening I thought I'd be having. And here I was, sitting alone at a table meant for 2, with a gift no one would open and a card no one would read. I could feel the sting behind my eyes, that familiar pressure that always came right before the tears. But I blinked hard, refusing to let them fall. Not here, not now. Then it hit me. That wave of dread so strong it nearly knocked the breath out of me. Check the location app, my brain whispered. The one we always used. For emergencies, for safety, for trust. My fingers trembled as I unlocked my phone. I didn't want to do it. I was terrified of what I might see. But something deep inside told me. I needed to know. I needed the truth, even if it broke me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely tap the app. For a second, I even hesitated. Part of me praying that maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't load. That there'd be some kind of glitch, or that he'd turned it off. But no, it loaded instantly. And when his little blue dot popped up on the screen, my entire body went cold. He wasn't at the office. Not even close. He was across town, at another restaurant. An expensive one. A romantic one. I stared at the screen, barely breathing. My heart was pounding so loud I swear I could hear it echo in my ears. I zoomed in, double-checking, praying it was wrong. But it wasn't. I knew that place. We'd been there once, years ago, on a date night. My mouth went dry, and my fingers felt numb. I tried to tell myself there had to be an explanation. There had to be. Maybe he's meeting a client. Maybe... But the voice in my head was done lying to me. Without thinking, I grabbed my purse, left some cash on the table, and rushed outside. I don't even remember walking to my car. My hands were trembling so hard it took me 3 tries to get the key in the ignition. But once the engine started, it was like I was on autopilot. I had to see it with my own eyes. No matter how much it hurt, I needed to know. The drive there felt like a blur. A nightmare I couldn't wake up from. My fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly they hurt, and my chest felt like it was caving in. Every red light, every turn. I kept whispering to myself, please. Let this be some awful misunderstanding. Please. Let me be wrong. But deep down, that tiny voice, the one I'd been trying so hard to ignore, kept whispering the truth I didn't want to face. As I pulled up to the restaurant, I parked a few spots away, just out of view. My hands trembled as I turned off the engine. I sat there for a moment, frozen, trying to gather the courage to look. Part of me wanted to drive away. Pretend I hadn't seen his location. Pretend I was still that woman waiting at a table, believing in the fairy tale. But another part of me, the part that was tired of feeling naive, knew I couldn't. Slowly, carefully, I stepped out of the car. My heart was pounding so violently it felt like it would crack my ribs. I walked toward the sidewalk, toward the big glass windows that lined the front of the restaurant. And then I saw him, right there, sitting at a table by the window, laughing, smiling, reaching across the table, holding her hand. His face, the way he looked at her, it was the look I used to believe was meant for me. For a moment I couldn't breathe. It felt like the ground disappeared beneath me. My hands flew to my mouth, trying to muffle the gasp that escaped. There he was, my husband, the man I spent the entire day planning a celebration for, sitting in front of another woman like he belonged there, like she was the one he'd built 10 years of memories with. His smile was soft, his eyes full of warmth, the same way he used to look at me. I stood there, frozen, watching them. She reached across the table, tracing her fingers over his wrist, right where the watch I had wrapped for him was supposed to go. They laughed, not the polite kind of laughter, but the kind that comes from deep comfort, intimacy. The kind that tears right through you when you realize it's meant for someone else. I could barely process it. My body felt like lead, my mind screaming, "This can't be happening, this can't be real." And yet, it was real. Painfully real. As I stood there in my anniversary dress, with a gift in my car and a card full of words he would never read, I realized something shattered inside me. Something I could never get back. And in that moment, standing there on the sidewalk, staring through that window, I knew. Everything had changed. Everything. And there was no going back. I don't even remember walking back to my car. My legs felt like they weren't mine. Heavy, numb, trembling. I sat behind the wheel, gripping it so tightly my knuckles turned white. For a few minutes I just stared out the windshield, my heart racing, my mind spinning. Tears threatened to fall, but I held them back. Not because I wasn't broken, but because something inside me shifted, something sharp, something done. I started the engine, wiped my face, and whispered to myself, "No. You are not falling apart over this. Not here. Not like this." The drive home was a blur of headlights and street signs. My hands were steady now, steadier than I expected. I wasn't thinking about why he did it. I wasn't thinking about who she was. My mind had cleared into something colder, something focused. There was only one thing left to do. End this. My way. The second I walked through the front door, something snapped into place. I went straight to the closet, grabbed an empty box, and started pulling his things out, one by one. Every shirt, every shoe, every stupid little reminder of him. No hesitation, no second guessing. I folded everything neatly, not for him, but for me. Because this was closure. This was me taking back control of a story I didn't ask to be rewritten. I moved through the house like a machine. His jackets from the hallway closet, gone. His shoes by the door, gone. The toiletries in the bathroom, his razor, his cologne, the one I used to love, all dumped into the box without a second thought. It was strange, really, how something that once felt like home could suddenly feel like an invasion. Like every trace of him didn't belong here anymore. Not in my space, not in my life. When the box was full, overflowing, actually, I dragged it to the front door. I grabbed another box and kept going. His books, his favorite mug, his golf gear. Every little thing that used to scream Mark was now just clutter in a life I no longer recognized. I didn't cry, not a single tear. Not because it didn't hurt, but because the hurt had turned into something else entirely. Something sharper, something stronger. A line had been drawn, and I was the one holding the pen now. Then, I walked over to the dining table. The same table where I had carefully placed his anniversary card earlier. The same table where, just this morning, I had imagined us laughing, sharing dinner, celebrating us. My hands reached for the card, but instead of tearing it up, I left it exactly where it was, right next to the gift. And then, an idea hit me. One final, undeniable message, one he wouldn't be able to talk his way out of. I pulled out my phone, opened the photo I'd taken, the one of him sitting at that table holding her hand, smiling like the man I thought I knew never existed. For a second, I just stared at it, letting it burn into my memory. Then I hit print, simple, cold, final. Within minutes, I had it in my hands. I grabbed a frame from the shelf, one that once held a picture of us on vacation, and slipped the photo inside. Fitting, really. A perfect replacement. I placed that framed photo right there, center stage on the dining table. Next to it, the card I had written with every ounce of love I had. And the gift, still perfectly wrapped, ribbon untouched. But now, I added something else. A note. Nothing dramatic. Nothing angry. Just a simple truth. I wrote, "While I was celebrating our marriage, you were ending it. Goodbye." 11 words. That's all it took to sum up the wreckage of a decade. Then, I walked over to the front door, opened it, dragged both boxes, every last piece of him, outside. right there on the porch, for him to find, for him to understand. I stood there for a second, staring at those boxes, realizing this was the last time anything with his name on it would ever sit in front of my house. And then, I turned around, locked the door, and changed the locks. The next morning felt different, quieter, lighter, almost surreal. I woke up alone, but not lonely. There was no text from him, no missed calls, no desperate apologies waiting for me, just silence. And for the first time in a very long time, that silence felt like freedom. I walked through the house barefoot, passing the now empty spots where his things used to be. And instead of sadness, there was relief. A strange, powerful sense of relief. I made coffee, just for me. No extra cup, no morning routine that revolved around anyone else. I sat by the window, watching the sun creep through the blinds, and whispered to myself, "It's over. Really over." It was scary. Sure. But underneath the fear, something stronger was blooming, something that felt a lot like courage. I realized the life I thought I had, it was never really mine. Not the way I deserved. But now it could be. In the days that followed, I didn't waste time waiting for explanations that would never come. I called my lawyer, filed for divorce, blocked his number, told close friends and family the truth, every raw, painful detail, not out of revenge, but because I refused to carry his secrets anymore. This was no longer a story of betrayal. This was a story about taking my power back, about rewriting my own ending and beginning. The funny thing is, once the dust started settling, I realized how much of myself I had put on hold. How many dreams I'd tucked away, thinking, someday, when there's time. Well, that someday became today. I booked my first therapy session, not because I was broken, but because I was ready to heal, to unpack years of shrinking myself, of bending, of compromising. Not for love, but for survival. And that chapter, that's closed now. I started filling my days with things that were just for me. Long walks, journaling, cooking meals I actually loved, not the ones he preferred. I signed up for a pottery class, something I'd always wanted to try but never had time for. And slowly, bit by bit, that ache in my chest started to soften. It wasn't gone, not yet, but it didn't own me anymore. I was finally learning how to exist. For me. And you know what surprised me the most? The strength. This deep, unshakable strength I didn't even know I had. I wasn't just surviving this. I was reclaiming every single piece of myself that I'd lost along the way. The woman who once waited at a restaurant table, full of hope and love, was gone. And in her place stood someone new, someone stronger, someone wiser, someone who would never again settle for being second choice. Weeks later, I found myself sitting at a beautiful restaurant, the very same one where I had waited for him that night. But this time, I wasn't waiting for anyone. I walked in, chin high, heart steady, and asked for a table for one. The hostess smiled, probably thinking I was meeting someone. I wasn't. I was meeting myself. I chose the best seat by the window, ordered my favorite dish, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely at peace. As I sipped my wine, I looked around, couples laughing, friends catching up, but none of it made me feel small anymore. I wasn't the woman sitting there, wondering if she was enough. I wasn't questioning my worth, my value, or whether someone would show up for me. No. I was there because I finally showed up for myself. And let me tell you, that was the most powerful feeling in the world. When the waiter brought the check, I raised my glass, smiled softly to myself, and whispered, "Here's to me." and to never being someone's second choice again. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't the anniversary I had once dreamed of. It was something better. It was the anniversary of my freedom, of choosing me, of starting the rest of my life, exactly on my own terms.
"You're not welcome here," my cousin Amanda sneered, blocking the entrance to Grandma Chen's house. "This is family only." I stood on the porch, holding the handmade birthday card and special tea I'd brought for Grandma's 90th birthday celebration. Behind Amanda, I could see other relatives inside, pretending not to notice the confrontation. "I am family," I said quietly. "I'm her granddaughter." "Please," Amanda scoffed. "You haven't been family since you put her in that nursing home. We're the ones who wanted her to stay home, remember?" I'm Michelle Chen, 35, and until this moment, I'd thought that doing what was best for Grandma, even when it was difficult, was more important than doing what was popular with the family. What my cousins didn't know was that Grandma had asked for the nursing home herself, after her third fall when no one was around to help her. "Grandma chose the nursing home," I reminded Amanda. "She asked me to help her find one." "Because you manipulated her." Amanda's brother Kevin joined her at the door, filled her head with fears about living alone, just so you could get your hands on her house. I almost laughed at the irony. My cousins, who visited Grandma maybe twice a year before she moved to Evergreen Senior Living, had suddenly become very interested in her property once they realized it was worth over $2 million in San Francisco's booming real estate market. "Let me just give her the card," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "and her favorite oolong tea." "She doesn't need your cheap tea," Amanda snapped. "We got her real gifts, expensive ones. Now leave before we call the police." As I turned to go, I caught a glimpse through the window of Grandma in her wheelchair, looking around the room as if searching for someone. My heart ached, knowing she was probably wondering where I was. I'd visited her every week at Evergreen, bringing her favorite treats and spending hours listening to her stories about our family's history. What my cousins didn't know, what none of them had bothered to learn, was that those stories weren't just reminiscence. They were instructions, carefully shared over countless afternoons, about our family's legacy and what Grandma wanted for its future. Walking back to my car, I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Mr. Harrison, Grandma's lawyer. "They wouldn't let me in, just like you predicted." His response came quickly, documented. "Don't worry, everything is proceeding as your grandmother planned." 2 months later, I sat in Mr. Harrison's office along with Amanda, Kevin, and various other relatives for the reading of Grandma's will. She had passed away peacefully in her sleep a week after her birthday party, with me by her side holding her hand. My cousins had barely visited during her final days, too busy planning how to divide up her property. I'd overheard Amanda and Kevin arguing about who would get the house and who would take the valuable antiques Grandma had brought from China. "Before we begin," Mr. Harrison said, adjusting his glasses, "Mrs. Chen asked that this video be played." The room fell silent as Grandma's face appeared on the large screen. She was sitting in her room at Evergreen, looking directly into the camera with the sharp intelligence that had never faded, even in her final years. "My dear family," she began in Mandarin, with English subtitles running below. "If you're watching this, I have left this world, but before Mr. Harrison reads my will, I want to tell you a story, one final story about our family's legacy." I saw my cousins shift impatiently. They'd never had the patience for Grandma's stories, always too busy with their own lives to listen. "When I came to America in 1960, Grandma continued, I had nothing but a jade pendant and a promise to my parents that I would build something lasting. That pendant bought this house, our family home. But a home is more than walls and land. It's about care, about presence, about understanding what truly matters." She paused, her eyes seeming to look directly at each person in the room. "Over the past 5 years, as my health declined, I watched my family carefully. I watched who came to visit, who took time to listen, who understood the real value of our legacy, And most importantly, I watched who cared about me, not my property or my money, but me. Amanda and Kevin exchanged uncomfortable glances. They had both dramatically increased their visits after Grandma's property values had surged. Some of you, Grandma went on, thought I was manipulated into moving to Evergreen. The truth is, I asked to go. After my falls, I was afraid. Michelle was the only one who listened to my fears, who helped me find a place where I felt safe, the only one who visited regularly, not to talk about inheritance, but to share tea and stories. I felt tears forming as I remembered those precious afternoons. Grandma had been teaching me, I realized now, preparing me for this moment. And so, she concluded, I have made my decision about our family's legacy. Mr. Harrison will now read my will. The video ended, and Mr. Harrison opened a thick envelope. The last will and testament of Chen Mei-ling, he began formally. To my family members who gathered for my 90th birthday celebration, I leave these words: presence matters more than presents. To those who blocked my beloved granddaughter from sharing my final birthday, I leave this lesson: true family cannot be blocked by doors or walls. Amanda's face had gone pale. Kevin was gripping his armrest so tightly his knuckles were white. And to my granddaughter Michelle, Mr. Harrison continued, who understood that caring for me meant supporting my choices, who visited not for gain but for love, who kept our family stories alive in her heart, I leave everything: my house, my savings, my investments, and most importantly, the jade pendant that began our American journey. The room erupted in chaos. Amanda jumped to her feet, screaming about undue influence. Kevin started threatening legal action. Other relatives joined in, their voices overlapping in angry protest. Mr. Harrison calmly held up a hand. Mrs. Chen anticipated your reactions. She had 3 separate psychological evaluations confirming her competency. She documented every visit, every conversation, every attempt by certain family members to pressure her about her property. She also, he added pointedly, documented who prevented Michelle from attending her 90th birthday celebration. This is impossible, Amanda sputtered. The house alone is worth millions. 2.3 million at current market value, Mr. Harrison confirmed, along with investment accounts totaling approximately $4 million. Mrs. Chen was an astute investor. I sat quietly, remembering all the afternoons Grandma had spent teaching me about her investment strategy, showing me the careful records she kept, explaining why she chose certain properties and stocks over others. There's one more thing, Mr. Harrison added, producing another envelope, a private letter from Mrs. Chen to Michelle, to be read after the will. He handed me the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper with Grandma's elegant Chinese calligraphy. My dearest Michelle, you understood what the others forgot, that wealth is not measured in property or money, but in the time we give to those we love. The jade pendant is in the red box in my room at Evergreen, along with detailed instructions about our family's investments. Use them wisely, and remember to tell our stories to the next generation. With love and trust, Grandma. As my cousins continued to protest, Mr. Harrison distributed copies of the official will along with a thick folder of documentation supporting Grandma's decision. Every visit was logged, every conversation about property noted, every attempt to influence her choices recorded. Your grandmother, he told them firmly, was much smarter than you gave her credit for. She spent years planning this, watching and documenting everything. Any legal challenge would only serve to reveal your own actions in detail. Gradually, the reality of the situation sank in. My cousins and other relatives began leaving, some angry, some shocked, some already trying to figure out how to get back into my good graces now that I was the family's primary beneficiary. Amanda stopped at the door, turning back with tears in her eyes. Michelle, she began, we didn't mean dash. Yes, you did, I interrupted quietly. You meant every word, every action. You showed who you really are. Grandma just made sure there were consequences. After everyone left, Mr. Harrison handed me a key to the family house, he explained, though your grandmother suggested you might have other plans for it. I nodded, already knowing what I would do. Grandma and I had discussed it during one of our afternoon tea sessions. 6 months later, the Chin family house was transformed into a senior community center, offering cultural programs, health services, and social activities for elderly Chinese immigrants. The proceeds from its sale to a non-profit organization, combined with Grandma's other investments, funded scholarships for immigrant students and support services for seniors living alone. I kept only the jade pendant and Grandma's investment records, using her wisdom to manage the charitable foundation we had planned together during those precious afternoons at Evergreen. My cousins tried to reconcile. Of course, Amanda sent tearful emails about family harmony. Kevin attempted to pitch investment opportunities. Others reached out through mutual friends, trying to establish connections to the foundation's resources. I responded to each one the same way. The foundation has a program for senior support services. Please direct any elderly relatives in need to our website. 1 year after Grandma's passing, I sat in what had been her room at Evergreen, now part of an expanded senior care program funded by our foundation. On the wall hung a photograph of Grandma on her 89th birthday, her last truly happy celebration, before the family's greed had overshadowed their love. A young volunteer knocked on the door. Ms. Chen, there's a resident who would like to share some tea and stories. I smiled, picking up Grandma's favorite teapot, one of the few personal items I'd kept. Of course, that's what this place is for. As I walked to meet the resident, I wore Grandma's jade pendant close to my heart. Its value wasn't in its worth, but in its story, the story of a woman who came to America with nothing but hope and wisdom, who built a legacy not of wealth but of understanding what truly matters. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Please, Michelle, we're still family. I didn't respond. Instead, I sat down with the elderly resident, poured 2 cups of oolong tea, and said what Grandma had said to me countless times, tell me your story. Because sometimes the greatest inheritance isn't what's written in a will, but the wisdom to know the difference between those who care about your money and those who care about you. 2 years after Grandma's passing, the Chin Family Foundation had become a respected force in the community. The senior center thrived, the scholarship program helped dozens of students, and our support services reached hundreds of elderly immigrants. Amanda and Kevin had both moved away, unable to face the daily reminders of their actions. Other family members drifted apart, their bonds to each other apparently as superficial as their care for Grandma had been. But new stories were being written. The seniors at our center shared their own tales of immigration, struggle, and triumph. The scholarship students brought fresh energy and innovation to our programs, and somewhere, I knew, Grandma was smiling, knowing her legacy had grown into something far more valuable than real estate or investment accounts. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about proving that what others considered worthless was the most valuable thing all along. Even if it takes a will reading to prove it. 30% of the profits generated by my algorithm over the past 5 years, plus ongoing royalties for any future use, and a public acknowledgement of my ownership. That's hundreds of millions, Gerald protested. Actually, it's closer to 2 billion, I corrected him. I've kept very careful records of the algorithm's performance, but I'm willing to be reasonable, if you act quickly. As Emily stirred in her bed, I added one more condition, and I want Marcus fired. Immediately, no severance, no recommendations, nothing. You can't dictate our personnel decisions, Gerald began. I can and I will, I cut him off. Consider it the price of forcing me to choose between my daughter and your profits. You have 1 hour to decide, or I start returning calls from your competitors. After hanging up, I focused on Emily as she woke up. The nurses reported her treatment was showing positive results, the best Christmas gift I could have asked for. Daddy, she said softly, did you have to work last night? No, sweetheart, I replied, squeezing her hand. I took care of something much more important. My phone buzzed with an email, a meeting request from Quantedge's lawyers for the following day. Attached was a draft agreement acknowledging my ownership of the algorithm and outlining the compensation terms. Another message followed quickly. Marcus has been terminated, effective immediately. When can you restore the systems? I looked at Emily, then back at my phone. After I'm sure my daughter is stable, the algorithm can wait. Family comes first, something your company should have understood. The next few days were a blur of hospital visits and legal meetings. Emily's treatment showed increasingly positive results while Quantedge's lawyers worked to formalize our agreement. The final terms exceeded my initial demands: full ownership of the algorithm's intellectual property, $3 billion in back compensation, and ongoing royalties for any future use, plus a public statement acknowledging my innovation and ownership. Marcus, meanwhile, found himself blacklisted in the financial technology sector, apparently. Forcing an employee to choose between work and their dying child on Christmas Eve didn't play well in the industry. 1 week after Christmas, as Emily was being released from the hospital with an optimistic prognosis, I received an unexpected visit from Gerald Maxwell himself. "You could have destroyed us," he said without preamble. "That wasn't my goal," I replied. "I just wanted what was rightfully mine, including the right to be there for my daughter." He nodded slowly. I lost sight of what matters. Profits became more important than people. "I'm sorry." "Are you sorry it happened, or sorry you got caught?" "Both," he admitted, "but the change you forced, it's making us reevaluate everything, our policies, our culture, our priorities." I looked at Emily, now strong enough to sit up and draw in her hospital bed. Sometimes it takes losing everything to remember what really matters. "Will you help us rebuild?" Gerald asked. "As a consultant, on your own terms. The algorithm needs its creator." I considered his offer. "Maybe, after Emily's fully recovered, and only if Quantedge implements real changes, starting with proper family leave policies and medical support for employees." He agreed immediately, probably realizing it was a small price to pay compared to what they'd already lost. 2 months later, Emily was back in school, her cancer in remission. I worked from home as a consultant, maintaining the algorithm that had once consumed my life but now served my terms. Quantedge had indeed changed. New policies supported employees with family medical issues. Work-life balance became more than just a buzzword. My story, though never publicly detailed, became a cautionary tale in the industry about the true cost of prioritizing profits over people. My phone buzzed with a text from Emily's teacher. "She's giving a presentation about her hero today. Spoiler alert, it's about her dad who chose her over everything else." I smiled, remembering that Christmas Eve choice that had seemed impossible at the time but now felt like the most natural decision in the world. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying what others built, it's about reclaiming what matters most and forcing others to recognize that some things are more valuable than money, even if it takes deleting a billion-dollar algorithm to prove it. The story spread through the financial technology world, though the details remained private. A cautionary tale about the true ownership of innovation, about the importance of proper IP agreements, about the cost of pushing people too far. But that's not why I tell it. I tell it because sometimes people need to be reminded that algorithms can be rewritten, money can be replaced, but moments with our children are irreplaceable. Emily is healthy now, her cancer in full remission. She doesn't know the full story of that Christmas Eve, but someday I'll tell her about the night her father chose her over an algorithm worth billions. And I'll tell her that it wasn't even a close call. Because sometimes the best code we write isn't in algorithms or programs, but in the examples we set for our children about what truly matters in life. Even if it means deleting everything else to prove it. "Either work or you're fired," Marcus barked through my phone. "The trading algorithm needs maintenance tonight. I don't care if it's Christmas Eve." I looked at my 8-year-old daughter Emily lying in her hospital bed. tubes and monitors surrounding her as she fought through another round of chemotherapy. The doctors had said these next 24 hours were critical. "Marcus, my daughter is in critical condition," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I can't leave her." "Not my problem, David. The algorithm needs to be ready for the Asian markets opening. Either do your job or clean out your desk tomorrow." I'm David Chen, 42, senior software engineer at QuantEdge Capital, or at least I was until this moment. For 5 years, I'd built and maintained the trading algorithm that had transformed their modest fund into a billion-dollar powerhouse. The same algorithm I'd coded while caring for Emily as a single dad after her mother passed away. "You're really going to make me choose between my dying daughter and your profits?" I asked quietly. "Your personal problems aren't the company's concern," Marcus replied coldly. "The algorithm needs maintenance. Period. Do it remotely if you have to, but it needs to be done by midnight." I looked at Emily again, her small face pale against the hospital pillow. The doctors had said the next round of treatment was her best chance, but the timing was crucial. She needed me here, needed her father by her side. "I understand," I said finally. "I'll take care of it." After hanging up, I opened my laptop, connecting remotely to QuantEdge servers. The trading algorithm, my creation, my code, my intellectual property that they'd claimed as their own, hummed away in the background, generating millions in profits even on Christmas Eve. What Marcus didn't know was that I'd been preparing for something like this. Years of watching them prioritize profits over people, of seeing them exploit every loophole and advantage, had taught me to have contingencies ready. I typed in my admin credentials and began accessing the core systems, not to maintain them, but to execute a plan I'd hoped I'd never need to use. The hospital room was quiet except for the steady beep of Emily's monitors. A nurse came in to check her vitals, giving me a sympathetic smile. She'd been here for Emily's previous treatments, had seen me working on my laptop during the long nights, trying to balance my daughter's care with the demands of my job. "Everything okay, Mr. Chen?" she asked, noticing my tense expression. "It will be," I replied, continuing to type, "one way or another." At precisely 11:59 p.m. on Christmas Eve, I executed a series of commands that I'd embedded deep in the algorithm's code, commands that would systematically erase my work while making it look like a catastrophic system failure. As midnight struck, I watched 5 years of code that had earned QuantEdge billions but had cost me countless hours with my daughter, disappear line by line. My phone began ringing immediately. Marcus, then the CTO, then increasingly panicked messages from the technical team. I ignored them all, focusing instead on Emily as the nurses started her critical treatment. "Daddy?" she whispered, her eyes fluttering open. "You're still here?" "Of course, sweetheart," I said, taking her hand. "I'm not going anywhere." Hours passed. Emily's treatment progressed while my phone continued to explode with messages and calls. QuantEdge was in chaos. Their precious algorithm, the source of 80% of their revenue, completely gone. At 8 a.m. on Christmas morning, as Emily slept peacefully after a successful treatment, I finally checked my messages. From Marcus, "What the hell happened? Fix this now." From Tom, "CTO systems completely down. Need you here ASAP." From HR, "Your presence is required immediately. Disciplinary action pending." I smiled slightly, remembering the conversation I'd had with my lawyer months ago, when I'd first suspected this day might come. The algorithm's intellectual property rights were never properly transferred, she had confirmed. They claimed it under your employment contract, but the specific innovation was developed using your own resources, on your own time. You've documented this? I had. Every line of code, every development milestone, every late-night session working from Emily's hospital room, all carefully logged and timestamped. The algorithm that had made QuantEdge billions had been created on my personal laptop, using my own development framework, during hours I wasn't being paid for. My phone rang again, this time. It was Gerald Maxwell himself. Quantedge's founder and CEO. David, he said when I answered, his usual arrogance replaced by barely controlled panic. What's happening with our systems? A catastrophic failure, I replied calmly, probably from pushing them too hard without proper maintenance. You know, the maintenance I was supposed to do last night while my daughter fought for her life. There was a long pause. David, whatever issues you have with Marcus, we can discuss them, but we need that algorithm back online now. The Asian markets are closed for Christmas, I interrupted, and when they reopen, Quantedge won't have access to my algorithm anymore. Your algorithm? Gerald's voice hardened. That technology belongs to Quantedge. Actually, it doesn't, I said. Check with your lawyers, check the development logs, check the IP agreements. The core algorithm was developed on my own time, using my own resources. The only thing Quantedge owned was the right to use it, a right I've now revoked. This is ridiculous, Gerald spluttered. We'll sue you for everything you have. Go ahead, I replied. I'm sure the press will love the story. Investment firm forces single father to abandon critically ill daughter on Christmas Eve. Great publicity. The silence that followed was deafening. What do you want? Gerald finally asked. I looked at Emily, peaceful in her hospital bed, her latest treatment showing promising signs. I want to spend time with my daughter without your company's constant demands. I want the algorithm's intellectual property rights formally acknowledged as mine, and I want compensation for the billions you've made using my innovation. Or what? Or I take my algorithm to your competitors. I'm sure they'd be interested in the technology that generated 80% of Quantedge's revenue. Another long pause. How much?